can't think people say London streets are paved with gold. That's the biggest joke I've ever heard.
If you're in England and you're hungry, you must have some money to eat or you die. In Dominica, if you're hungry, you meet a friend, you say I want a sugar cane or I want a coconut, and he gives you one freely.
The cost of living here is a little bit high. You could eat cheaper in England.
I'm hoping to live there sometime.
Go back again?
Yeah, I want to die there.
Really?
I love England.
Why do you have this dichotomy? I mean, violence in your hands and violence in our hands. We are as entitled to change our situation by violence as you are.
Dusky Dick Whittingtons who've turned again to their islands in the sun after sampling London life. We all know what we think about West Indians, but what do they think about us from a distance? Their view of Britain can be surprising, and it's not always the way we see ourselves. Just as their Caribbean's a quaint holiday paradise for leisurely tourists, but quite another place if you're black and poor and have nothing to spend but leisure. Today, Britain's host to 1.25 million blacks, some 300,000 of them from the Caribbean. We've stopped immigrants settling in Britain, but despite such limitations, some West Indians already inside our barrier have packed up, left London and come home, turning their backs on our suburban supermarkets. So, what made them return? And what's more, how do they now remember us? Harry and Cynthia Thompson left Barbados for Britain in '56, but returned to Bridgetown to open this dry cleaning business after 7 years in Willesden.
When I left here, I was looking for an opportunity, and I know that there was a better opportunity there for me, and I would have to seek it, and I went after it. I started at Selfridges. What would we call it then? A sweeper, sweeping and cleaning and things like that. Cleaner, I think that's what they called us at the time, a cleaner.
Was it agreeable living there? Did you run into caliber problems?
No, never. Never.
Yeah, there was one problem, sorry, that we did have after we bought our house with a tenant living there. And
a white tenant?
A white tenant, yeah. She did really lie on me. She took me to court, and I was convicted. The magistrate didn't seem to hear what I wanted to say.
You convicted of what?
What she charged me for threatening her, she said.
This was in Willesden?
In Willesden, yeah.
I never had any problems. I got on well with everybody, and the people were quite nice.
Why did you decide to come back?
He didn't like the weather there, the climate.
I don't like the climatic conditions in England. So, yeah.
Just the weather, nothing else?
Nothing else.
No, nothing else but the weather, really.
He cried every day of the cold. He didn't like the cold. I enjoyed better health in the cold.
How much money did you take with you?
Well, I took £10. Yeah.
How much did you bring back?
No.
£6,000.
£6,000, so you had something to show for being in England?
Oh, yes, a tremendous amount.
So in 7 years, you turned £10 into £6,000. How did you manage that?
Oh, by hard work. 12 hours every day for almost 2 years, with the exception of my annual leave.
What would you say you're worth today?
Oh, about 180,000 West Indian.
£50,000?
I think it's much more than £50,000 in sterling.
Well, it's more than 10 quid anyway. We'll settle for that. At Government House on the Isle of Dominica, the Governor's orderly is Colour Sergeant Leslie Ashley Roberts. Back in 1955, he left here to live in Kilburn. So, what made him come back?
Well, actually, the weather enticed me to come back. It was much too cold for me then after 7.5 years. So I decided to come back to Dominica.
But if you'd put up with it for all that time, couldn't you have gone on putting up with it?
I feel the more you remain there, the colder you feel.
Really?
Oh, yes. Well, I really.
Now, what was life like in Kilburn?
Oh, it was very nice there, but especially in Watford, where I worked. Relationship was just great.
Really?
I just got along with everybody, you know. And any West Indian could get along in England, providing he conducts himself in the way he ought to. Yes.
You didn't come back because you ran into any colour prejudice or
Oh,
anything like
no,
that?
not at all, not at all. Not at all.
How are you off now? You're a colour sergeant in the Dominica Defence Corps. Are you better off financially than you were?
Oh, yes. But at the time, it was more profitable in England than it would have been here.
And now?
I'm a bit better off here now.
Are you?
Oh, yes.
And yet you see, you're in the Dominica Defence Force, and the Dominica Army hasn't even got a bicycle, I'm told.
That's true. That's true.
So your chances of promotion don't seem very good.
Well, I think I reached my climax.
On the other side of Dominica, at Petit Marigueux, Ralph Carlton owns a rum shop. He left in '61 and for 4 years worked as a carpenter in Hackney.
What decided me to give up and come back? My wife could not keep up her health. And
What was the trouble? She was getting colds?
yeah, she was getting cold.
Yes.
And
There she is, I believe. Is this Mrs. Carlton?
yeah, she is.
Hello, Mrs. Carlton.
Hello?
I'm told that your health wasn't too good in
No,
England.
I was getting bronchitis.
Bronchitis?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So you were really the one who decided that Ralph had to come back here?
Yes. Well, I decided to come back home, and he said, well, if I'm coming, he's coming too.
Yes. Now you're here, back in Dominica, is there anything from Hackney that you miss?
Not much of it. I would say sports, like going to the dog track, things like that.
Dogs and the bingo.
Oh, you miss the
Bingo
dogs?
and things like that.
And the
The
horse
sports.
race.
What about you, Mrs. Carlton? Is there anything you miss?
Yes, I miss the sports, you know, bingos.
Oh, bingo.
Dog,
Yes, of course.
bingo.
How does life compare here, your life here, and your life in Hackney? Which is better?
I think here is better for me.
Why?
I feel more comfortable, more at home.
What about this terrible heat here, though?
I think the heat in England is much more forcing in summer when it is hot.
Stronger?
Yes.
Do I understand you right? You're accusing London of being too hot.
When it is summer, sometimes.
When it's too
not
hot,
all
it
the
is too
time.
hot, and when it's too cold, it's
It is too cold, yes.
Well, the British Tourist Board ought to hear about you if you're complaining about the heat, about the sunshine in England. That's a new
Sometimes
one.
the sun is not actually shining, but it sends a terrible heat. You see?
This is forcing.
What about the living conditions in Hackney? What were they like?
Well, the living condition in Hackney was very deplorable.
Deplorable?
Yeah.
In what
You
way?
live on a building with so many people, you have to get out to the public bath to get a nice bath and everything. But here you just go to the rivers and you have a bath 2-3 times a day.
Did you find any colour bar or any unfriendliness from the average Englishman?
No, I did not find that, to be honest, for myself. But there were places where I went with my wife looking for a job for her. And on the factory doors, you will see no Negroes wanted.
I don't see a notice up here saying no white served.
Oh no, we haven't got that.
In that case, let's
No,
go.
we're in Dominica.
Let's go and have a drink.
All right, so
All right.
Leaving St George's on Grenada, Oliver MacDonald worked for 10 years as a carpenter in Notting Hill.
That was pretty rough when I got there, especially. The housing problem was at its peak at that time,
This was what year?
1960.
So what did you think of North Kensington?
To be honest, I did like the place, in spite of how rough it was, you know.
See, one feels a place like that, there's a lot going on, there's a lot of people there. There must be a more amusing life than perhaps here, where you're a little more isolated.
Well, it is, yeah, if you like those sort of things.
Yes.
It is, I mean, well, they call it a name. I mean, something always happening there.
Yeah, not always good things.
No, it's bad, it's rough, and policeman breaking down somebody's door or something like that.
Really? Everyone talks about that. Was it happening, really?
Well, yeah, I saw it happen quite a lot of time.
Did you?
It never happened to me, really, because, well, I kept myself away from those things, you know, the law especially. We was doing jobbing around, you know, fixing windows and doors, those sort of things. And they sent me to work at a woman place at Knightsbridge. And she refused to let me in. Yeah, when she saw and, you know, I said carpenter, she didn't. And then she said, you go back and tell Mr. Simmons that send another carpenter and send a white one, she said. Well, that is one of the worst I really met up, you know.
What about in the streets and that sort of thing? Do you run into any trouble there?
Minor things, well, a fella called me black bastard, and so I just go away. Well, in the pubs, usually, I mean, a fella would drink too much and find something to say.
Now, what do you miss about England?
Well, the beer is one.
Beer? Yes.
The beer is the best, I think.
Yes, I'll drink to that. What else?
Well, many other things. I mean, it's hard to say or pinpoint which one, you know, that I really miss. Now, I wouldn't enjoy the weather there now, for a start.
No, that's bad. Those are things you're glad to miss.
Yeah, but the standard of life there, of course, I like it, except the housing business, you know, the housing problem.
Overall, I get the impression that you didn't like it very much, really.
Well, I never did, as I say. I never liked it there, but, you know, I had to live. I mean, somehow, and I just decided to make a go of it. I never liked the place in general, the atmosphere. The other thing, I never been used to seeing that amount of people, especially in the peak hours.
Yes.
You know, I never see that crowd here in my life, you know, sort of thing. And at first, that used to bore me. You gotta be bouncing about in the market and shopping centers and so, which you doesn't see here.
Dino Sukmunan's a Hindu. His great-grandfather came to South America from India. For nearly 10 years, Dino lived with his typist wife in Brixton. You were a fish cook at the Russell Hotel. How much were you earning then?
It's only £20.
£20 a
week.
And now you're the second sous chef
I'm
here.
the second sous chef. Only about £35 a week.
So you've almost doubled your
Almost
income.
doubled.
And how did you feel, Margaret, when you arrived here?
Well, I was shocked, but I've got used to it now.
Why were you shocked?
All the way of living in the houses. He warned me, but when I got here.
What did he say?
He says, well, don't expect too much, because it's not the same as being at home. It isn't. Because you can't go out, you see. This is a drawback. You can't go out by yourself for a walk. You're frightened to go out.
Because?
Because of the choke and rob, and in fact, in case somebody pulls a knife out on you. It's just the evenings, you know, because the evenings can be nice. It's lovely and cool, and you could go out, but you can't by yourself.
Choke and rob? What does this mean?
You know, they walk in gangs, you know, about 5, 6 of them. And if they know that you're on your own and anything like that, one of them will walk behind you.
They think you've got money.
And they think you got money or a watch or something. They just put their hand around your neck and one of them hold you behind your back and the rest...
No one feels for it. If you've got gold on you, they just pull it off you. And
they don't care.
They don't care.
If you don't have anything on you, they just beat you up, you know, and just throw you on the floor. And see next time you walk with money.
Because that's all they are for, money.
What about the police? Aren't they any good?
Not really, not compared with the English police anyway, because once I was standing up on the road and there was a big fight, and down this road was a policeman riding on his bike coming out. And when he looked and sees a crowd there, you know, he just turned his bike back and rode through a one-way street.
Did you run into any colour bar problems in England?
I found them very prejudiced when I was working at the co-op in London. They're very prejudiced.
About your husband?
Yes, and coloured people anyway in London.
Really?
About the people in 40 years of age, but people 60, 80, they were saying, oh, they're in the war, they help the Commonwealth and that.
And what about the colour bar out here? I mean, isn't it a disadvantage you having a white wife?
Not really, no.
No, it's helping.
It's helping me, you see.
Now, would you like to go back to England?
Sure.
You would?
Mommy!
Do you want to go back, Jimmy? You want to go to England?
Is it snow?
Because of the snow? Oh. Yes, they're a bit short of snow here, aren't they? Do you want to go to England? Yes. J. Henry Thomas left Georgetown in 1952 to become an accountant, but after 7 years in London, returned to Guyana.
In London, the pay was £850 at the time, £850. In Guyana, it was £1,400. So, I mean, it's a lot of difference between £850 and £1,400.
You almost doubled your
almost
income.
Doubled my income. That was one. And the second thing was, it was a nice way to show the fellows, well, look, I've made good, man. so you can do likewise, you know.
The other thing is, I suppose, that you are much more significant here than I suppose you were in London. You became a minister, did you not?
Yes, I was.
Is that something to do with Amour Propre, then? You felt yourself more of a personage here than you would in London?
Well, of course, you see, in London you're just one of a crowd. In Guyana, one is somebody. I mean, you can walk the street and, personally, I mean, sure, about 10 or 15% of the population would know who you are. So, I mean, you are somebody. In London, you're just, as I said, one of a crowd.
Now, what do you miss from England?
Oh, the main thing I miss, I must admit, is the refinement, the culture, the ways one can spend one's leisure time. For example, in my day, we did a lot of climbing. Climbing, yes, in the Lake District. Then the countryside, you know, hiking, that kind of thing. Here, if you want to do that, you have to go in the jungle. And tropical jungle is an entirely different thing from the countryside, say, in Sussex Downs or something like that, you know.
Home in Trinidad after 8 years in Europe and now teaching at a government school, Merle Hodge. She got her BA and master's degree in philosophy at University College London. Now 26, first novel just completed, she's small, fragile, and she talks like Cassius Clay. What are you glad to have left behind you?
Racism and cold.
Now, how did racism show itself? The cold I know about.
Yes. How did it show itself? Well, it became more overt towards the end of my stay, with the advent of Enoch Powell and his government. And racism, which before was politely veiled, came out into the open. And the police and the government, as far as the public is concerned, now condone racism, actively condone it. Anybody who feels like having a bash at the blackies can go ahead, and the blackie goes to complain, and he gets his head bashed in again by the police. He's taken down to the cells and gets beaten up. It has got pretty grim now.
See, this thing about bashing the blacks, in my experience, it's always happened to someone else. I asked somebody about it, and they say, yes. Did it happen to you? No, it didn't happen to me. It happened to my friend.
Yes, but I have seen it happen.
But did it happen to you?
Well, I was never in a situation where I would have been bashed. I mean, and I never had to go inside a police station for any reason. I mean, they never got hold of me to bash me. But, for example, I've been on demonstrations, and when the bashing started, well, I wasn't at the center of it. But I mean, my sister was bashed, for example.
But I mean, do you see, after your 7 or 8 years in England, do you see the British Bobby as a sort of swaggering bully waiting to bash a black?
I suppose that's one way of putting it, yes. British Bobby is not the little innocuous fellow, you know, that we learn about in our school books. He's not, most certainly not.
He's not?
No, he's
well,
not.
how do you see him?
He is protecting your little heaven. I mean, the little thing you made for yourself, right? Your values, your high standard of living, right? Your minimum salary, your minimum working hours per week. But I've seen people's cuts and bruises from the police. I mean,
you're critical, I believe, also of the policy of encouraging tourism.
We have to be able to qualify tourism. Now, tourism in your country, in England, it makes no dent on you. The tourists come and you find them a little irritating, just as you find the pigeons in Trafalgar Square. They come and they look at your Buckingham Palace and they look at your Nelson and they click their cameras and they go off again in their bus loads and they leave some foreign currency behind. And what is happening is that the people who run tourism, people who send tourists here, they create an image of us from the outside. They create an image of these smiling teeth and black faces and silly straw hats and things. And what happens is that we promptly pour ourselves into the silly image that they create. I mean, we are going to cease to exist in our own right. We are going to exist only for tourists. We are going to be a product on the market, a product for sale. Just, I don't know, we are going to become a nation of bellboys and titillators and chambermaids, you know, and our only vocabulary is going to be thank you, sir, and shine your shoes, sir, and this kind of thing. I mean, this is probably exaggerating, but this is what is going to happen.
You don't like them smiling at the foreigners, is that what you're saying?
No, I won't say I don't like them smiling at the foreigners. I don't like foreigners creating from the outside this image of smiling, happy-go-lucky natives, and then natives pouring themselves into this image and making themselves into happy, you know, smiling buffoons for the tourist benefit. I mean, when is our personality going to congeal, and when are we going to...
But I don't find happy, smiling buffoons waiting upon me in my hotel. I find sullen, irritating, inaccurate, inefficient, unpunctual, thoroughly objectionable people. So you ought to be pleased.
No, well, yes, I suppose in one sense I'm pleased, yes, but why on earth should there be anything but sullen and unobjectionable?
He's getting his salary, and if he weren't being employed there, he would add to the 14% of unemployment, presumably.
What condescension, yes, exactly. This is what tourism is about, isn't it? Condescension. We are helping you natives. I mean, come on and take the scraps from under our table. You should be happy for them. I mean, you've fixed yourself up, and we still have not. Tourism out here is not like it is in England. Tourism, your tourists don't invite you to gather the crumbs from under their table. I mean, you almost condescend to your tourists. You almost condescend to let them come and look at your Buckingham Palace. In our case, is the tourists condescending to us?
I don't find that we condescend at all. I'm delighted if they look at it, and I don't find that I'm condescending here. I was very interested to be here. I'm having a rough time while I'm here, by your customs people, for example, by your waiters.
Yeah, so why should you not?
I'm not welcomed, really, and I'm aware of this. So, you know, I don't object, but I'm going. Now, many tourists will do the same, and you will be the poorer for it, will you not?
Of course we'll be the poorer for it. In what sense? Materially. I mean, you know, all this is such condescension. I mean, we're going to take our cameras, we're going to take our, I don't know, take our hotels and leave. And where will that leave you under your little tree singing? I mean...
You'll be proud, then you'll be proud. Is that what you want? Proud but poor?
Proud but poor. We don't necessarily have to be poor. I mean, we could take our resources over for ourselves.
I thought you had, Shirley. You've certainly taken the Hilton over. But this is this pie in the sky, isn't it? You know, and when you haven't got the white slave masters to blame, when they've gone, what will you do? Who will you be? You'll have to blame yourselves, and then it'll be in a bad way. There won't even be a British bobby to blame. Did you bring back from Britain any happy memories?
Well, happy memories, I said, well, the happy memories would not necessarily be connected with England itself. I had happy memories of people.
Of your own friends?
Own friends, yes.
You didn't feel that any contribution was made to you as a person?
They're being condescending again. I went to England and got my education. All right, I'll say thank you, dear England, for my education. Is that what you want?
Do you see, I find of the two of us that I'm the one that's colourblind and you're the one that's not.
Yes. What does colourblind mean? Colourblind has no meaning for the time being. At the state at which the world is in, it can't really have a meaning, right? I mean,
it does. I mean, it means that I look upon you as an intelligent and attractive young woman, and you look upon me as some sort of white imperialist, condescending.
Yes, but see here, the way at the moment the world is divided into the people who have and the people who have not, and the line coincides with a colour line. So, I mean, people can't afford to say I'm colourblind. I mean, until we have this change, of course, we'll be able to say we're colourblind when we're equal.
So what you're saying is terribly depressing to me, because in effect you're saying up the revolution, are you not? Roll on the bloodbath.
Well, yeah, of course, bloodbath. I mean, of course, roll on the revolution. By all means, roll on the revolution.
But the violent revolution, because you say every revolution must be violent.
You have two definitions of violence. Violence as wielded by you, and then violence, or, you know, a gun in a black man's hand, right? And violence wielded by the white man. A white man with a gun is God, wielding justice, right? And a black man with his little cutlass or his little slingshot, he's Satan, right? To be put down and exterminated. I mean, you own the world today, right? The world is white. And how did this come about? By violence. Because you developed the guns and the gunpowder first, right? So as a result of this, you own the world. Now this will have to be reversed by violence, violent change, right?
But aren't you as an academic distressed if you're not as a coloured girl distressed? Are you not as an intellectual distressed by this?
I'm not an intellectual, that's all. I'm not an intellectual.
Well, I like to believe writers are intellectuals.
Yes, but what is your definition of an intellectual then? Who is somebody's going to change the world by thinking, by the sheer force of thought? But this hasn't happened before, has it? It hasn't been forced, that muscle and gunpowder.
Guns.
Right, gunpowder, right? I mean, the ideas have been there, I mean, right? But the ideas have been put into force by gunpowder. It wasn't the ideas of themselves.
Is this what you're feeding these kids?
Of course not, for feeding these kids. What do you mean?
Muscle and gunpowder.
I'm teaching the kids English and French.
Roll on the Bastille.
Whatever else the kids have to learn, they're going to learn it.
Really?
I don't have to teach it to them, I'll tell you that.
Truly?
Yes, I don't have to teach it to them.
You're painting a depressing picture, aren't you?
I don't think it's depressing at all. I mean, of course it's depressing for you. Of course it's depressing for you.